If your plants keep dying despite the fact that you water regularly, you feed properly, and there's not a single pest in sight, today we're going to talk about lighting, why it's so important, and why it can fix probably 90% of your houseplant problems. I'm Adam from Dirty Roots Berlin. I've been growing houseplants for over 25 years, and I run a creative studio where we focus on plants as an artistic medium. Let's get into why light is just so important. You really want to feed your plants with sun. When you don't get enough light, you often have low energy, you're not quite sure what to do. It's sometimes a struggle just to get up and go on with your day. Plants are very much the same. Perhaps you got a plant that was told was great for low light. But what does that actually mean? And is low light really what you think it is? Most houseplants grow outdoors. Actually, no, all houseplants grow outdoors unless they have been bred by botanists. They come from nature. Even growing in the shade is very different than growing inside of an apartment. Plants are not humans, but we often use human terms in order to understand more complex concepts. So if you want to anthropomorphize plants or sort of give them human traits, then you can say that plants eat sunlight. The way a human eats food in order to get the calories, to have the energy to do things, plants actually do that process with sunlight. So they take in sunlight and use a process called photosynthesis to basically break apart carbon dioxide that they absorb from the atmosphere and turn that into carbon and oxygen. And they use that light, the energy that's in there, to sort of rip apart that carbon and turn it into something that the plant can use to fuel the rest of its processes. So we say that plants eat light because it's their method of gathering energy to fuel most of the processes that they're doing. So if a plant doesn't get enough sunlight, it doesn't photosynthesize properly. In other words, it doesn't really have enough energy to function and do the things that it needs. So even if it has enough water, or the right amount of water, the right amount of nutrients and access to those nutrients, the humidity is fantastic, everything else is on point. Without having your light in place, none of those things are going to matter. Nothing's really going to get started. You can have sunlight and lack all the other things for at least short periods of time, and the plant will still generally do okay. The plant can also lack sunshine for periods of time and still be okay. And in fact, it needs periods of darkness, almost all plants do, in order to continue functioning properly. But it is still so essential. And I think that the amount of light that is outside is vastly different from inside. Even overwatering your plants, this problem can often be solved by increasing the amount of light. If a plant is receiving sufficient light, they often can stay sufficiently wet. This is probably why most plant advice says that you should keep your plant evenly moist. That's assuming that you're giving it the appropriate amount of light. But if you're giving it not enough light, then that even moisture may end up being too much in the long term. But if you slowly increase the amount of light in a plant that has too much moisture, it's going to start using that moisture more regularly. Plants use the moisture to cool themselves off when they're getting too much light and to fuel other processes. So this can be a great way to deal with a plant that has too much water. Light really plays a very important role in the overall health of the plant, and the quality of that light really matters. And something that is very difficult for humans to comprehend just based upon using our own senses is the different qualities of light. Our pupils will change size depending on how much light is available, so that we can see things differently, or we can see things fairly similarly in lower light and higher light situations. But on a bright sunny day, the amount of light falling on a leaf of a plant is going to be so much more light than even that same sunlight coming through your window. The windows, even if you have direct sunlight coming in through your windows, every single window filters light to some degree. And actually, the more energy efficient your windows are, usually the more light they filter out. That's actually what makes them efficient or energy efficient is they don't let so much light in, which doesn't heat up your place as much. You don't have to spend so much to cool them down. They usually are better insulated, but these layers of insulation and layers of coating filter the light. So the quality of light that's just inside of your window is different than the light that is just outside of your window. There's going to be a difference for that plant. If you had a window box and a windowsill and you grew the same plant on there, the plant inside would get a different amount of light than the plant outside, even if they received the exact same hours of daylight, the exact same angle of light. The quality of light is going to be different, and that is going to affect your plants. So many of these plants that are even considered low light, we think, oh, I could put this in a shady corner of my apartment. But the issue is that light really falls off very quickly. So a low light plant in a shady corner receives vastly less light than a plant grown in deep shade outside. It's near pitch black to a plant. Our eyes might be able to adjust and see some light there and see the plant as being, receiving some indirect light, but the amount of actual light it receives is very, very low. And we can tell this because you can actually measure light in a variety of different ways. Your phone, you can get apps on there that'll give you a general indication of light based upon things like micromoles or foot candles or different measurements of light, which will tell you how much light, but also the intensity of that light. And those numbers, not very essential if you're just a hobbyist home grower, those numbers still help us understand what is actually deep shade, what is virtual darkness to a plant versus something that a plant can sufficiently handle. So I think most plants labeled as low light plants actually need significantly more light than we realize. And having a light meter, even one that's just an app on your phone, so that you can test things and see, can give you a good indication. I wouldn't use them as hard and fast tools. I mean, the cameras on our phones are not built to be light meters in the same way as an actual professional light meter may be, but they will give you a general indication of just how different light is across a space. So you may want to get an app and test it around your apartment and see how much different light is falling on your plants to really see what they need. And then you can always use information online, look up your specific plant. Like I've got a Ficus benjamina here. How much light do they generally like? What's too much, what's too little? You'll start to learn that a lot of your plants, like this Ficus benjamina, love a lot of direct hot sunlight if you acclimate them to it. Almost no plant loves to go from sort of a shady spot to a really bright spot. You really want to give them some time, maybe a few weeks to acclimate. But this is definitely, once you start realizing, almost, I would say 50% of the houseplants out there can handle intense direct sunlight. I mean, most of the ones here on this table, from the tomatoes to this parlor palm to the peyote and the tobacco to the jades and every single plant here could be grown in full sun or near full sun, assuming that I acclimated them appropriately. And most of them are not growing in such harsh conditions, but that's also why then they struggle a lot more. You notice this is not the same as the big, beautiful plants that you see outside, and that is not solely due to being grown in smaller containers, but is largely actually driven by the amount of light available, and therefore the plant's ability to use the nutrients available, as well as the moisture, and properly grow healthy and strong. Without properly setting up light to begin with, you're really going to be struggling a lot more in a lot of different ways. Most of the problems you see are an offshoot of not having enough light. For example, you probably can't see her on camera, but this tray full of succulents is actually covered in mealybugs. And that is largely due to the fact that the light it's getting is not strong enough and not for the right amount of duration. So because it isn't that strong, I can't really overfeed it, or I can't give it a lot of nutrients. So it has less nutrients, because if I overfeed it, particularly in a shallow tray like this, without giving it enough light, it's going to struggle with root issues and anaerobic soil conditions. And so then I have to sort of underwater it so that I don't go anaerobic, and because it's not getting enough light. Whereas if it was flooded with lots of light, I could give it a lot more nutrients. The bugs would probably be far less because the plant would be able to create its own internal defense compounds. And while it may not be completely free of bugs, it would help it to be much more healthy. My solution is to probably bring it outside, first by putting it into a shady corner, and then slowly increasing the amount of light over the season. That will do two things. One, by bringing it outside, it will be under the natural elements. You're gonna have things like rain and wind, which will help reduce the pests. You also have predators to those pests, which will help reduce the numbers. But the plants themselves will be in a better situation, lighting-wise, to then be able to produce their own compounds and defense systems. So what does that actually mean for you? Really, what it does is, one of the things that you can start doing is figuring out how much light your plants generally receive out in the wild, and start to try to give them that kind of light. The other thing is to understand that if you're going to be indoors, the quality of the light will never be the same as it is outdoors. Now, you can get grow lights, like something here. You can use actually even standard light bulbs, for the most part, are going to work fine as grow lights, assuming they're close enough to the plant. Because the further away the light is from the plant, the less it's going to receive. If it's going to be right up next to this plant, I can't really get it closer, but if it's right up next to it, that's going to be sort of scorching it. If I move it just a few inches or centimeters back, it might be the perfect amount, and a little bit further away, even just this far away from the plant, might be too far away. So you want to use maybe a light meter to get an indication of the range of the light falling on the leaves. Then, if you're not really into getting grow lights, which may be the case, you can certainly bring your plants outside for the part of the year where they'll at least survive. So here in Berlin, there's usually about a good 4 to 6 month window where I can bring my plants outside, where I don't have to worry about frost or too low of temperatures or too low of light. Because if I keep them outdoors too long, they will start to suffer from it being a bit too moist without enough sunlight. And so I bring them back in long before the freezing temperature set in, because the darkness and the cool dampness of Berlin is not going to be ideal. But if I give them that short period of the summer where they can really boost and grow growth, it's going to be fantastic. So taking plants outdoors, if you slowly acclimate them, is a great way to increase that. Getting some grow lights can also work. You want to ideally get full spectrum lights. Regular light bulbs are mostly full spectrum. Some are shifted towards more the blue, some more towards the red, but almost all lights these days are fairly full spectrum and will have enough of the lighting spectrum to be able to grow your plants at least better than no light at all. The only thing you really want to avoid is old school fluorescent light bulbs. Even most newer fluorescent light bulbs have a much better spectrum than the old ones did. The old office buildings, from the 80s and 90s, had a greenish hue to them, particularly in movies, and that was due to the fact that the light has such a limited light spectrum. Outside of that, actually many fluorescent lights these days work great. Regular lights work as well. You can get houseplant specific lighting if you want, but those are some options. The other one thing is just understanding that your plants will struggle a bit because of that, and that's okay. We don't need to always have the biggest, fastest growth all of the time. It's cool if our plants hobble along a little bit. I don't need every single plant to be maximized with growth, particularly since if I gave every single one of these plants its own individual grow light, that'd be a massive energy consumption that I just don't think is necessary to fuel this beautiful art form that I love. I can still grow them in less than ideal conditions and understand and tailor my approach based upon the conditions that I do have. So you don't always have to alter your environment. Sometimes you just have to alter your approach. I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful at all, please think about subscribing, and please let us know in the comments what you think about lighting. Have you really taken it into consideration? Am I overhyping its importance? Are there other things that maybe you think are more important than light? Let's talk about it. And of course, if you want to learn more, I talk about it in my book. You can always get that, where I go a little bit more in depth about all of these aspects so you can get a bigger picture on just what you can do at home and what's really holding your plants back. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one.